Beyond the Clef is presented by Director's Choice.
Welcome to Beyond the Clef SMSE 2018, and I am here with Paul Sikes. Paul is the Director of Instrumental Music and Music Education at Texas Wesleyan.
Yep.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, David.
That
I
is some
appreciate you
title.
having me. It's a long title.
Yeah, basically that means Paul is the guy who does
Paul is the guy
a
who
lot.
does instrumental music and music education.
Yes,
and that's pretty big.
Sweeping the floors too is probably in there.
A little
That's where
bit,
the
yeah, whatever it
adjunct
takes.
professor of the room. And
You know,
yeah.
it's funny. I thought eventually I'd stop moving chairs and stands, but it hasn't happened yet.
yeah. I definitely thought that too. At some point, I'm like, man, my back hurts. I need the kids to do this
I've
more.
been doing
but
it
yeah.
since middle school, man.
That's great. Well, you're in Fort Worth, and you have a workshop you were telling me about that you do for music educators in the summer?
Yes,
Yeah.
in the summertime.
Tell me more about that.
Well, so kind of just a little bit about my background first.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I grew up out in Odessa, Texas, as a cellist and a trombone player, and I played both growing up, and I ended up becoming a band director, and then actually became an orchestra director after that. And it occurs to me we have a bit of a problem right now, and that is we just don't have enough string teachers to fill all of our string jobs in the state of Texas, and really nationally for that matter. And being a guy who had taught band for a number of years and then went over and taught orchestra for a number of years, I kind of saw a need to help fill some orchestra jobs, but at the same time not lose some of our current teachers, because unfortunately, teaching's hard. Teaching music it's quite difficult.
We had a great interview this morning with Dinah Menger.
Yeah.
Dinah Menger.
Yeah,
and,
from Fort Worth ISD.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she was talking about that very same problem with the people that are from years 1 to 5 teaching, wanting to quit because of the support. And I'm sure it's probably really tough in orchestra because there's a lot of singletons. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying there's just this need that you're trying to help fill this niche.
Well, there is a need, but it even goes beyond that, because what'll happen, as I'm sure everybody's aware of, people will teach for a long time, and then they have a little bit of a career burnout. They want to do something different, that kind of stuff. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep teachers in the profession, but give them an opportunity to kind of change their career path a little bit. And so what I've done with Pat Leverton, who's also in Fort Worth ISD, and Brian Coatney, who's over in Plano ISD, the three of us put together this workshop where what we want to do is we want to take experienced teachers and retrain them to be string teachers, because what we hope it does is it kind of fills the need of string teachers, so we get some good string teachers, but it'll also maybe help take some of those our current teachers that are looking for a little bit of a change in their career and give them an opportunity to teach strings. So that's kind of what the purpose of the
and this
string
is
camp was.
a yearly workshop.
It's a yearly workshop.
So if I want to come to your workshop, like, how do I find out about it?
So if you want to come to our workshop, basically you call me would be the way to do it. Texas Wesleyan. We also have a website that we can visit. But those are really the two best ways to just kind of do it. We just started this year; was our first year.
Oh, great!
And we hope to grow it for the years coming up. Do kind of the same thing we've done before, expand it a little bit, get more people there. We're looking at maybe expanding a little bit in the orchestra world. One of the new things coming on pretty big is mariachi. In the state of Texas, mariachi is becoming a big thing in and of itself. Usually the mariachi class is put within the orchestra director's kind of realm.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, but a lot of times the orchestra directors don't have experience in mariachi, so something we're looking at is maybe adding a mariachi portion to our workshop, kind of as an add-on or something like that, so that people who might, like myself, who never was in mariachi but might be assigned mariachi, can give them some support, some background, stuff like that.
What are the experience ranges that you're seeing in your clinic this workshop this first time?
We saw anywhere from fairly new teachers, like second, third year teachers, to people who've been teaching 20, 30 years in our workshop.
Somebody shouldn't feel uncomfortable if they've been teaching for a long time and need
No.
to go in and help. But it also, if I'm maybe fresh out of college and I realize this is my new thing, I got to figure out how to do orchestra. That might be good for them too. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody who's it's designed for mostly the newbies to the orchestra world. It's not really designed as much for the more advanced stuff.
Okay.
We do cover some advanced topics, but for the most part, it's real basic fundamental stuff. We work through different procedures of how to get the instrument. We start with how to get the instrument out of the case. We work on how you teach a kid to hold a string instrument, good hand positions for both left, right hand, making a good tone, how that relates to the band world or vocalists. We actually had some vocalists come as well, and how like for example how the bow works exactly like the winds do, like the wind does, the wind instruments or the wind in the vocalist, that kind of thing. And so we cover a lot of the basic stuff. Then we move into vibrato. We move into shifting, cover string literature. Because if you're new to the orchestra world, you know the literature, and that's a big part of it, right?
Sure.
Picking music's big part of your job.
Yeah.
So we cover a lot of the literature, things like that.
So it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the methods class later on.
It really is, and we kind of designed it as a methods class, really.
We go through these methods classes like everybody. You take the string thing here and the band thing here and the vocal thing here, and you're supposed to do all that with your certification. Sure. But always with these method classes, even in my own instrument, I felt the connection between that and then the time I actually need to disseminate this information. Even though there's a semester, but if there's years, it's hard for me. I spent about 3 years between when I started teaching beginner band to when I was in the last methods classes I possibly was. That's a long time if you didn't make sure that you had some really core stuff going on. And those classes are like, 3 weeks here you go, next instrument, right?
Right, exactly.
So this is a really good refresher for maybe just a lot of people that want to go in and get a different perspective about how a lot of people do things.
Yeah, it is. And we designed it a lot in that regard, but we also kind of attack it from a little bit different perspective, because a lot in the methods classes, what often happens is they're teaching you how to play the instrument.
Right.
And we are not that we're not interested in that. We do that.
Sure.
But really we're more interested in teaching you how to teach the instrument, because just take, as a band director, my example, I'm a trombone player. I grew up as a trombone player.
That's okay. We'll forgive you.
Well, they gave me a degree anyway, so, whatever. It's like, well, okay. It's kind of,
you got to have some people fill that role.
I know. You get that bottom half of the bell curve, right?
They don't call it low brass for nothing.
That's
I'm just
right.
kidding. I play the euphonium, guys.
That's
okay.
right. We're all kidding. We can say that because we are. But anyway, the idea is that they teach you how to teach it. But as a trombone player, I've got to be teaching percussion. I've got to teach flute. I've got to teach oboe, all that kind of stuff. Well, it's the exact same thing in the string world. Except for what's really nice about the string world is the pedagogy transfers, right, from one to the other. Unlike an oboe player, which really doesn't have a ton in common other than maybe the airstream with a trombone player.
So maybe one way to think of it in terms that I can understand as a band director, sometimes it's kind of like brass pedagogy.
Yeah.
Goes from brass to brass. And there's variances and differences,
Exactly.
of course, between tuba and French horn and how you have to do it, but it's a very similar methodology.
Yeah, it's real similar. Not like, the woodwinds, they're all over the map.
Right, sure.
Same thing with percussion. But in the string world, it's, violin pedagogy, viola pedagogy, cello, bass. They're all slightly different. What you do on them is a little different, but the basic concepts are kind of similar because it's the same family of the instruments. But the idea is we want to teach people how to teach those instruments, not necessarily how to play those instruments. Now, we think it's important. We give them instruments and we have regular rehearsals and things like that because we want to go through that process.
It's just your focus is on.
But the focus is on.
That's great.
Exactly. So the focus is like when we get our participants in there, we'll give them a string instrument and we'll have a rehearsal, right? First off, we teach them how to hold it. We do all that stuff. And we always make sure they're on an instrument they're uncomfortable with because we want them to experience the same thing their students are going to experience.
Right.
And
I do that with my student teachers when they come in during the second band rehearsals and sometimes the top band rehearsals. I'll say, what's your worst instrument? I'm like, all right, go get one.
That's right. That's exactly what
Have
we
a
do.
seat.
Precisely. So if they're a violinist, if they played violin, let's put them on bass. If they're a low strings, let's put you on violin or viola. If you can't read alto clef, you're playing viola. Here we go. And so we put them on these instruments that they feel uncomfortable with so that they understand what their students are going through, because that's the main thing, right? If you're gonna We want you to know that it gets hard to hold your arm up like this for a while, especially if you've never done it before. And so we want to make sure that they feel that and they feel their arms are tired. That way when they're teaching, they don't have their kids holding their instruments up for, half the class period or something like that.
It's like flute class.
Exactly like flute class, right? Like you give somebody a sousaphone the first time. Okay, now I want you to stand there for an hour. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that we give them the instruments, but it's really based on how to teach it. So as they find problems, as they're working through learning to play the instrument, they'll come up with questions, and we're able to deal with those questions in a setting, and then we work together to solve those problems. And so it's kind of a hands-on clinic where they're playing the stuff. They figure out their own problems. They're able to ask us, experienced string teachers, and then we can give them, okay, so this, do this, do this, do this, do this, whatever those problems are. So it's a real hands-on thing.
How many days is it? What?
We did 5 days.
Oh, great!
And,
wow.
Yeah, and it's 6 hours a day. So we do 3 hours in the morning, take a lunch break, come back 3 hours in the afternoon for a full week.
Wow. Okay.
Is what
great,
it was. So
great.
it's a pretty intensive thing. Comes up to about 36 hours, I think it was. So it's 36.
30 hours.
Yeah. 35. Yeah. Oh yeah, 30 hours. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Low brass again.
Low brass.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So 30 hours of instruction is what that is.
So that's and obviously people getting credit for this in their district and reaching out to make sure that they get those. But that's a really great thing. And obviously there's ways that the cost of it and whatnot, and people can talk with you about that.
Sure.
Getting districts to work on that.
Yeah, the cost this last year we did was $400 for the week, which is really pretty reasonable for 30 hours of instruction. Most of our participants, their costs were covered by their districts. Whether in Fort Worth ISD, they were able to cover the cost. We had a participant from Killeen ISD who worked on a grant and actually applied for the grant, got the grant, and Killeen ISD paid for it. We had a participant from California whose school district paid for her to come out, and then we actually, it was really great, we had a teacher, a band director from India, like the country. And he's a Texas guy.
He got the award for longest distance traveled.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. Longest distance traveled.
Wow.
He's actually a Texas guy, but he's been teaching in international schools since he graduated from college. And he's currently in India as a band director. And they have an orchestra program started below him. He teaches at the high school and this international school, and he didn't know anything about strings and wants to be able to do it. So he came all the way over from India to work on this workshop. So we were pretty excited to have kind of a wide range of people from. Sure. We kind of expected it just from the Metroplex, but we ended up a lot of people from outside the Metroplex, from really all over the world coming, and so we're very excited about it.
I'm sure it'll make more traction. So one thing that occurred to me too is one of the outlets, maybe people who are doing full orchestra, because I was just thinking if I had a full orchestra program and I'm a band director and I'm working with the orchestra teacher and whatnot, I need to know more about strings in order to work in that program, and so that might be a really good application too. That I'm sure were people like that in those situations.
There were actually. We have one of our participants came up as a new orchestra director at the new Fine Arts High School in Fort Worth ISD, and so he was able to come and kind of get he's kind of a wind background, and he was able to come and get the strings background to do full orchestra and the things that they're going to be doing there. Another interest we had is actually with fine arts coordinators.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of times a fine arts coordinator might be a band or a theater or vocal background, something like that, or elementary music, and now they're going to oversee a strings program. A lot of interest was shown in new fine arts coordinators coming so that they would have a good understanding of basic pedagogy, so that when they go and they're going to interview people or they're going to observe them and kind of see, try to help them out, they could have something to talk about.
Well, and also what I was thinking is the people that are, when I started teaching high school, one of my mentors said, hey man, no matter what, you got to teach middle school, because you got to know where they start,
right,
and what that is to start. And sometimes you don't, and you take it for granted, especially on your own instruments. And so sometimes those high school directors need to get in and learn how to teach beginners a lot more, and from the get-go. So vertically.
For me, I grew up a cellist and trombonist. Those were my two instruments, and I find that I actually, those are my worst two instruments I teach. And it's because, like you said, you do it, you forget how you do it.
Right.
Whereas on these instruments you don't know very well, you go through the process of learning how to do it.
Like teaching someone to tie their shoe.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just put the loops together.
Another one of our participants, I was so happy to have her there. She has a doctorate in violin performance from the University of Illinois. Wonderful, wonderful violinist. But she didn't feel like she knew how to teach violin or any of the string instruments for that matter. So even though she's wonderful at pedagogy, she didn't feel like she really had the teaching background.
Well, I'm sure that was helpful in the class to have that diversity and have her input too.
Yeah, it really was.
Right.
It was really great. But it was also, I think, real beneficial for her to kind of get that, okay, how do I teach a kid how to pick up their instrument and hold it? How do I teach them how to make good hand positions? How do I teach them how to vibrato for the first time? These are things that she's never done. Right. And so it comes down to the playing versus teaching. We're really focused on the teaching, which I think is something that's not covered enough. If you go on, any website, you go on the internet, whatever, and you want to Google string pedagogy, you're going to get, instrumental pedagogy, which is fantastic. But that's not necessarily how you teach that stuff. And so what we really want to focus on is teaching. We're all teachers. We love teaching. That's what we chose to do. And we want that's what we're trying to do. Teach people how to be better teachers.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like something that I'm going to be looking into myself. I'm really excited. We actually, unfortunately, don't have an orchestra program in my district, but it's always something that, I've been interested in. It's something very scary. It's funny, they hand you that piece of paper when you graduate saying, hey, you can teach all levels, but I guarantee you when I go into the middle school choir, I can understand the music of it, but I'm like, sing louder, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I hope all our viewers that are not, or that are choir people are like, oh God, turn this guy off.
I know. No. But you never know. And that's the thing. And I always try to tell my students this. I've taught string pedagogy classes at the university level before, and I always smile a little bit because we'll get, some hardcore band guys, some hardcore vocal guys like that in the string pedagogy class. And, they're kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. It's a class I have to take, blah, 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 blah. And then a few years later, I get phone calls or emails from, hey, I'm teaching orchestra, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, you never know where your career is going to go.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to have an option that you can choose if you want to at some point. I grew up. I was drum major. I was marching band, big time marching band. I still am. I love it. Absolutely love it. But my career didn't take me that way. My career kind of took me into the concert side and the orchestra side. And so having something like this when I started teaching orchestra, even though I had a string background, something like this would have been really, really helpful. And that was kind of the impetus behind it. And so that's what I want to give people. I want to give them that option that wherever their career goes, this is an option for them that they can then take and then try something new. Kind of invigorate your career kind of thing.
That's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
We had so many other things that I'd love to have you back on the program and talk about a little bit more, but just talking about this workshop just sounds like it's been so fantastic, and it's been a really good thing that you're doing for music in general.
Well, we hope so.
I'm really excited about hearing more about it, and I hope our viewers, maybe they'll come your way too. If
I
they're
really,
in need.
I appreciate you having me on and let me talk a little bit about it. It's it was a really great week. It was a lot of fun. It was inspirational for me, and I think it was inspirational for a lot of our participants. We got a lot of positive feedback about it. And so we're excited about doing it again. We're looking forward to seeing kind of where it takes off from here. Like I said, we just did one, but Pat and Brian and I, we're excited about pushing forward with it and making it bigger and better.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
on the
David.
program.
I appreciate you having me.
We have Paul Sikes, let me get the whole title right, Director of Instrumental Music and Music Education at Texas Wesleyan. Thanks for joining us at Beyond the Clef.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Clef. For more great content, subscribe on our website at beyondtheclef.com. And be sure to follow us on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Facebook.